Welcome, I'm Jim Falk. As federal budgets are being sharply reduced and, frankly, agencies dismantled, the effects are rippling across the country, often in unexpected ways. In this program, we're not here to debate whether the actions of the Department of Government Efficiency, aka DOGE, are justified. Rather, our goal is to explore how organizations are being forced to rapidly adapt to a new landscape, one where federal funding is quickly becoming a thing of the past. Now, joining us today are representatives from two very different sectors, libraries and food banks. Let's turn now to them to learn how they're navigating what many are calling the new normal. To hear from the North Texas Food Bank and how they're responding, we're going to turn to Clarissa Clark. She's the Government Relations Officer at the North Texas Food Bank, where she has been since 2023. Coming to us from Austin is Shirley Robinson. She's the Executive Director of the Texas Library Association, the nation's largest state library association, where she leads statewide efforts to support and advocate for libraries of all types, something I think we can all support and get behind. So, ladies, welcome. So glad you're here. Shirley, I'd like to start with you, if I may, and give us just a thumbnail sketch of what your organization does.
Yes, absolutely. So as you said, TLA is the largest state library association in the country. We are a professional association, a nonprofit organization for individual librarians across the state from school, public, academic, and special libraries. And what TLA does is to provide advocacy, professional development, leadership opportunities for our members so that they can best serve the communities that they are involved with.
Clarissa, I didn't realize just how complicated the funding is for your food bank and food banks across the country. How much federal funding do you get? And a lot of it comes from the Department of Agriculture.
Yes, we get agriculture products, nutritious food from the USDA, and about 40% of our 126 million annual meals are tied to government programs. So we do senior boxes, food for kids, and send to our pantry partners.
And there have been cutbacks, significant cutbacks at the USDA that are affecting your work.
Yes. There was a program that started in 2021, LFPA, and it's local food programs where they send it to schools and to food banks, and that has ended. So we have lost some funding for that.
Immediate?
Yes, for local farmers. There's also it's called TFAP. It's the Emergency Food Assistance Program, and that's where we get a lot of the USDA foods that we distribute to our over 500 pantry partners in our service area. Part of that funding has been cut for the remainder of the year, so that's a $2 million that we're going to have to make up to buy more food.
Was that funding that was already committed to?
The last round that they told us would not come through.
So how have you all reacted to it, and have you been able to make it up?
Well, we're adjusting. We have fabulous donors in North Texas. I mean, they're really very supportive, and we've had people step up knowing, what's going on. But it's going to be interesting. There's a lot of unknowns because this is just the beginning. But our executive team, Tricia Cunningham, is great at pivoting. She was here during the pandemic, and we are making up the difference because we are, our mission is to serve people and to get people healthy and nutritious food. So we will do that.
Shirley, I think often, especially in Dallas, when people think of a library, they think of the downtown library. They may think of the library at University of Texas at Dallas or SMU. But libraries are a lot more than that. And when I drive across the country, I see these small buildings, and it'll say, blank town library. And those libraries are really dependent on federal funding, aren't they?
Oh, they absolutely are. So we have about 508 public libraries across the state of Texas. And you're absolutely right. Many of those are kind of the community hub of that small rural town where they provide, in some cases, the only access to Wi-Fi. They provide training for workforce development, helping people to do their taxes. There are a lot of libraries who lend out equipment or seeds for gardening. It's really the social hub, and the library is truly one of the last public spaces that is free to anyone, regardless of any factor that you can think of. And so they are incredibly important to the fabric of our community. And the loss of funding like this is going to have an immediate impact, as I mentioned, on the people that those libraries are serving in those communities.
And you mentioned several areas that libraries do work, but also for people with disabilities, the visually handicapped, for example, or physically disabled.
That's right. One of the things that has shifted in libraries, of course, in the last few years is that, yes, libraries are a place where you can go and check out a book, but you can also do so electronically. Let's say that you're someone who is not really able to leave your home. Your local library has ebook subscriptions that, as a user of that library, you're able to interact with, and just have virtual connection with other people as well. So libraries have really evolved, and we need to make sure that they're able to continue to do so. We're definitely seeing kind of a shrinking of civic space as well as respect for the professionals who really help to keep those spaces going. Libraries, like many nonprofits, are being asked to do more with less. They're facing new scrutiny and restrictions that really challenge their mission of open access and professional expertise. So it's not something that's just happening to libraries, but it's definitely become much more prominent, I think, in the last couple of years, especially here in Texas.
Well, when this executive order was put in place that essentially eliminated the IMLS, it was also when the Woodrow Wilson Center was essentially eliminated in Washington, D.C., a wonderful think tank. Um, the National Endowment for the Humanities, the U.S. Interagency Council on Homelessness. I mean, this was really across the board. So many organizations were affected. How are you able, Shirley, to respond and to motivate people to perhaps reach out to their congressional representatives?
Yes, I mean that's been a common refrain for us, and TLA as an organization has been really active in the space of encouraging community members, whether it's talking to your school board or talking to your city council or your county commission, or your legislator who represents you at the Capitol, about the importance of libraries and all of the resources that they bring. And so that's just been a really important space for us to be in. We know that through building coalitions with other similar as well as dissimilar organizations to us, nonprofits across the state, that we'll be able to have a greater voice and hopefully be heard and reinstitute some of these really important services that rely on funding from the government.
Clarissa, we all know where the library is, we hope, and hopefully we went there with our mothers and fathers. But something like a food bank, that's not something that everybody thinks about until you need it. And I'd like you to take a few minutes and really tell us about the essential work that the North Texas Food Bank does and why perhaps you too need to do a better job of reaching out to the community so that people realize how essential it is to our community.
Yes, the North Texas Food Bank actually serves 12 counties, and it's 9,200 square miles where we have deliveries to over our 500 pantry partners all over. It can be anything from a small church to a large organization, like we work with Catholic Charities, Salvation Army, Metro Crest, a lot of the bigger organizations to provide food for their food pantries. And it's definitely it's something that people don't think about. We're like a Federal Reserve for food, but it's definitely needed, and we're seeing a lot more demand. Our demand went up 10% last year over the previous year, which was even more than the pandemic. So you've still got a lot of people that are struggling, and there's sort of a myth that it's sort of unemployed or homeless people, and that's not the truth. We're seeing working families.
Why?
Well, the inflation, the cost of nutritious food is very expensive now. I mean, that's the biggest thing, and that's what most people want, actually. But with rent and utilities, especially in North Texas, the cost of living has gone up so much that they just can't get by. And the thing I love to do, I love going to visit our pantry partners because they do such great work. And they tell me that they see people, these are people, working people. They could get off work, they're in their uniforms. They could be a caregiver in a long-term care home for seniors. They could be construction workers. These are working people who are just not making enough to get by. And if you have like a medical emergency or a car accident or something where you've got to shell out an extra $400, what's the first thing you can cut? You can't cut your rent, your utilities, so you're going to cut food. And it really affects everybody. You would never know it. Since I've started working for the food bank and people know, what I do, they've told me, well, when I was growing up, I had to go to a food pantry. I mean, you just never know because it's not something people want to talk about. But we are dedicated to serving our neighbors and to provide, again, the nutritious food for everyone. So.
Have you had to lay anybody off with some of these cuts that we've seen?
No, and hopefully what was cut is our USDA food. So we have to buy more food is the thing. And I think, like I said, we have very generous donors and hopefully it's not going to come to that. So we definitely are continuing to serve because the demand is there and the need is there. So we really can't stop.
So Clarissa, what's the impact on the farmers?
Well, that's it too. And as you may or may not know, the Farm Bill actually expired in 2023. Congress has extended it the second time, and it will expire this September. And some of these programs that were cut, specifically the LFPA, the one I mentioned about the schools.
And remind us again what those initials are. I admire so much that you can keep all these
Well,
acronyms
I know
straight.
it's the Local Food for Schools Cooperative Agreement, or the Local Food Purchase Assistance Cooperative, which allows local farmers, pays local farmers to provide food to us and to schools, to food banks and to schools. Now, hopefully what we're doing, our food bank is part of a network of other food banks called Feeding America, and we do advocate with our members of Congress. We are trying to get, we want a strong farm bill. It's the most important piece of legislation that dictates people's access to food and for farmers. So we're hoping that some of these programs, we can get them in the Farm Bill. We can show how valuable they've been and the impact that they had on both the people that need the food and to the farmers, and to get it into the food bank. But I work year-round basis. Part of my job, I know all the staff and our members of Congress and our state elected officials, and they actually, you'd be surprised, because they're hearing from their constituents how expensive everything is.
Is it a red-blue issue?
No. Obviously, food is nonpartisan, and there is concern.
But on the Farm Bill, I mean,
same. I mean, the issue with the Farm Bill, part of I think where you have a controversy is that the largest piece of the Farm Bill is SNAP, which is the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, or what used to be called food stamps. That's the biggest budget item. So anything that's a big budget item is going to be a target. And Congress has already said in their blueprint that they just passed that they will want to cut $230 billion over 10 years from the USDA, the Agriculture Department. Now, they haven't said yet what they're going to cut, but because SNAP is the largest budget item, we are concerned about that because a lot of people rely on that.
Well, you say it's a big budget item, and yet, Shirley, it seems it's not always the amount of money because, again, IMLS, what was the total amount? I have it somewhere on my notes. Yeah, about $300 million.
Right.
So, yeah, that's a big number, but it's really 0.003% of the federal budget. Come on, guys, really. And the impact to the state of Texas, I read, and tell me if this is right or not, was $12.5 million. And that is a lot of money for libraries.
Yeah, it is. And that's about 33% of our state libraries budget. And, the thing that's important to keep in mind, and I'm glad that you mentioned that 0.03%
Zero zero
number.
three.
0.003. It is such a minute portion of the overall federal budget, but those funds are so incredibly important. I think what folks don't always remember is that nonprofits, just like Clarissa is talking about, are often really kind of the first responders to our local needs. These are not services that are discretionary at all. This is helping folks with their quality of life. Sometimes these are life saving, many times these are life saving services. And so when funding like that disappears, there are ripple effects that go far and beyond, what that very small dollar amount is.
So there are 508 libraries. I'm full of facts, right? You can read them. 508 libraries in the state of Texas.
Public libraries.
Public libraries. Is that too many? I mean, could you make the justification?
Oh gosh.
That
No, it's not. It's not too many. We get to talk with our librarians every day, and circulation numbers are up, which means that people are in the libraries checking out books, but also taking advantage of all of those other services. I walked into my local library on Friday, which was, a holiday, and normally numbers are up, but the library was just bursting at the seams. There is so much to do and see and find in your local public library. And of course, we have our school libraries, hopefully on every single campus. It's a safe space for people, and it's an important space for people.
I'm glad you mentioned the word safe space, because I was just thinking about this, Clarissa, that nowadays schools are so difficult to get into. I don't mean colleges. I mean, walking into a high school or an elementary school. And back when I was a little bit younger, schools could really provide meeting rooms to community organizations. They can't do that anymore. And so libraries provide really a central function for that too. And people vote in libraries too, don't they?
Oh, they absolutely do. Libraries are polling places, and I'm glad you mentioned the meeting space. Those meeting spaces are always full. There are a lot of libraries, especially in our smaller rural areas, that may not have as close of an access point to a healthcare center, that are serving as telehealth centers. They might have a partnership with a local hospital, and they're able to set up those services there. So there are just so many things happening in our libraries.
And I don't think you mentioned mobile libraries, but you see a lot of those in Texas. And I guess those are largely funded by the government.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, those are, our libraries receive generally funding from their city or their county, and then also this federal pass through funding, as well as some fundraising. But you were talking earlier about kind of the funding model and how that is shifting. And these organizations, nonprofits, and libraries and food banks are all set up based on a certain fundraising model. And to shift that is going to be very disruptive and time consuming. Frankly, we need to be focusing on the services that we're delivering, not scrambling to find additional funding.
We could do another show on book banning, but I'm thinking about newspapers. And you have like the Washington Post and LA Times and others that are now owned by an individual. So it's no longer really in the public trust the way it used to be. And I can almost envision a time when some libraries might be adopted by an individual or a foundation. And I wonder what that would mean. How do you see that, Shirley?
I think there's something very special about the way that libraries are structured, and that they are there for and by the community. And when you introduce private interests into any organization, that sometimes does shift the dynamic and the focus. Librarians have a very unique role in making sure that there are materials and services there for every single person in the community, and that they're looking at what the needs of their community are. They really know it best. And so it's worked really well for a very, very long time for that reason.
I don't think Benjamin Franklin would be very happy with what's going on now.
I don't think so either.
Am I right? He established the first public library.
Yes. Mhm.
So, Clarissa, I'm worried about tariffs. My avocados are harder to find. I've been told they're going to get more expensive. I just read an article in the New York Times that avocado truly is one of the best health foods. How are the tariffs possibly going to increase the price of produce in particular? And how will that put more strain and stress on your organization?
Sure, absolutely. I mean, we're going to have to pay more. As you said, we're not getting as much from the USDA, so we're going to have to buy that food. And it's like I said, it's the nutritious food that's so expensive. And yeah, but it's definitely going to be a problem. We don't really know yet. Nobody knows. Like I said, I was meeting with the chief of staff and policy people from an elected official's office, and they were asking us, how is the tariffs going to affect you? So, and they didn't even know of some of the cuts that I was talking about. So, we're, we're planning, we're planning for the worst and hoping for the best, I guess, basically.
Now, you're one of the largest food banks in the country.
Yes.
Where do you rank?
I think oh gosh, I think we're in the top 10. I would say top 5. I'm not really sure. Sorry.
And a statistic that amazed me is that $4 billion are contributed to Feeding America in private donations, which is the largest U.S. charity in private donations. So, where does Feeding America fit into what you do?
Well, they are the sort of the umbrella. We are part of Feeding America. We're one of their network partners, and then there's also each state has one. So there's one called Feeding Texas. We are under that umbrella, and we basically make up Feeding America. So, but yes, people are very generous, and I think that goes back to that you never know who it has to go to get a food pantry, who needs food. It goes back to the thing that you never know. So when people, you hear all the time, they give because they have been there.
They were affected.
Yeah. So and we hear that.
It's like the grateful patient at a hospital.
Yes, yes. So that's probably why they're so generous, because they've lived it.
Now, you work almost full time in government relations. Shirley, how are you seeing a response from congressional representatives, city council members in reaching out to their representatives to say, hey, this is really having a dramatic impact on our community by cutting library funding and other similar efforts?
Yeah, so TLA is really fortunate in that we have a lot of individuals who support libraries, who follow TLA for advice and information about what's happening across the legislative landscape. And so we, as well as the American Library Association, have been sending out calls to action to ask all of those individuals to contact their elected officials to let them know about what the impact is. And so we've done a number of those throughout this legislative session here in Texas, as well as since the recent actions towards IMLS.
So I've written some letters like this, or clicked the link, and I get a form letter back. Are you getting more than that type of a response? Do people really feel and understand what's going on and the threat to really our communities?
Yeah, I mean, those calls to action are really important. We know that the staffers in those offices do keep counts of how many of those they receive. It's really important to send those. It's also important for individuals who care to pick up the phone and call or even go in person. And so we're doing, all of that. And I think that we'll see where it goes. At this point, we need lots of voices at the table.
Clarissa, few people are more attuned to what's happening on Capitol Hill than you. What do you think?
Well, I think there's a little bit of confusion, even amongst what Congress is doing. That, and a lot of the staff, they were asking us questions. So what we need to do, and what part of my job is to educate them on what we do, what food banks do, what nonprofits, how we make up and help where the government can't. So we do, like Feeding America gave a travel stipend to a couple of our pantry partners. And we went up to Washington with them, and they could talk about what they were seeing. We just few weeks ago, took a busload of over 60 people to Austin and went and talked to our legislators there, and they knew we were there because it's a lot of people. So they need to hear from us and what we're seeing, what we're going through. That's the only way they'll know. And we have calls to action too, and it is very important because they have a lot coming at them, from all different angles. So just by giving them the data, the facts, and and also the personal stories of how
do you break through the noise?
Well, it's it. It's hard, but again, you can't wait till there's a crisis, and that's why I have the job I have, and that I keep year-round relationships and invite them to the food bank to see what we do. Invite them to events, invite them to distributions. When we're giving out food, so they can see. We had Jasmine Crockett come out about a year ago to a Thanksgiving distribution in her district. There were people lining up at 1:00 in the morning. We had over 1,000 cars. So, for them to just see what's going on, the impact, and why this is necessary.
So you all have both done just a tremendous job of explaining the challenges that your respective organizations face. And so I'm very, very grateful to both of you. And as we've just heard, severe cuts to government programs and federal grants are creating a really important, scary ripple effect, impacting organizations and the people they serve. Whether it's someone facing food insecurity for the very first time, or a neighbor seeking tax help at their local library, the consequences are real and widespread. Too often, we take these services for granted, forgetting the delicate web of support that holds our communities together. Thank you so much for watching Perspectives Matter, where we talk about things that matter with people who care.